The woman who smiled always. In a small village by a quiet river, there lived a woman named Alara, and she always smiled. Her smile was a soft thing, like the first light of the morning. It was not a big, loud smile. It was a small, gentle smile, and it was always on her face. She lived in a little house with a blue door. The house was very simple. It had one window and a small garden. In her garden, she grew flowers. She had red flowers and yellow flowers and white flowers. Every morning, Alara opened her blue door and she looked at the sky. She smiled at the sun. She smiled at the clouds. She smiled if it was a sunny day. She smiled if it was a rainy day. Her smile did not change. After looking at the sky, she would water her flowers. She had a small green watering can. She filled it with water from a well near her house. The water was cool and clear. She walked to each flower. She gave each flower some water. She smiled at the red flowers. They were bright and happy. She smiled at the yellow flowers. They were like little suns in her garden. She smiled at the white flowers. They were quiet and peaceful. The flowers seemed to smile back at her. They stood up tall and bright. After watering her flowers, she would feed the birds. Many small birds came to her garden. They knew Alara was kind. She had a small wooden table in her garden. She put bird seeds on the table. The seeds were very small. There were black seeds and white seeds and brown seeds. The birds would fly down from the trees. They would land on the table. They would eat the seeds. Alara watched them, and she smiled. She did not make a sound. She just stood and watched the little birds eat. They were not afraid of her. They knew her smile. They knew her quiet kindness. The people in the village all knew Alara. They saw her every day. When she walked to the village market, she smiled at everyone. She smiled at the baker. The baker was a big man with a white apron. He was always busy. He did not smile much, but when he saw Alara's smile, his face would become a little softer. He would give her a warm loaf of bread. Alara would say thank you with her smile. She smiled at the woman who sold vegetables. The woman had many good things. She had green cabbages and orange carrots and red tomatoes. Alara would choose some vegetables. She smiled at the woman. The woman would smile back. It was hard not to smile back at Alara. Her smile was like a small, warm light. She smiled at the children who played in the street. The children loved Alara. They would run to her. They would say, "Hello, Alara," and Alara would smile at them. She did not say much. She did not need to. Her smile said everything. It said, "Hello." It said, "I am happy to see you." It said, "Have a good day." Some people in the village thought she was strange. An old man named Martin sat on a bench every day. He watched everyone. He saw Alara and her smile. He would say to his friend, "Why does she smile all the time? Nobody is happy all the time. It is not natural." His friend would nod. He did not understand Alara either. A young woman named Sarah was sometimes sad. Her work was hard. She would see Alara's smile and feel a little angry. She thought, "It is easy for her to smile. She does not have my problems." So, some people liked her smile, and some people did not understand it. But Alara did not change. Her smile was always there. It was a part of her, like her eyes or her hands. It was there in the morning. It was there in the afternoon. It was there in the evening, when the sun went down and the stars came out. She would sit by her window and look at the moon, and she would smile. Then, one year, the season changed in a bad way. The summer was very hot and very dry. The sun was not a friendly sun. It was a hot, angry sun. The sky was blue and empty for many weeks. There were no clouds. There was no rain. The quiet river by the village became smaller and smaller. The water moved very slowly. The green grass on the hills turned yellow, then brown. It was dry and hard. The baker's bread was a little harder because the flour was not as good. The vegetable woman's vegetables were smaller and not as bright. The farmers in the fields outside the village were very worried. Their plants were dying. They needed rain. Every day they looked at the empty sky. Their faces were full of worry. The children did not play as much. It was too hot to run. The whole village became quiet and sad. The mood was heavy like the hot air, but Alara still smiled. She woke up in the morning. She opened her blue door. She looked at the hot, angry sun, and she smiled. Her smile was the same. It was small and gentle. She went to her garden. Her beautiful flowers were sad. The red flowers were not bright. The yellow flowers looked tired. The white flowers were bent down. The ground was dry and cracked. She went to her well. There was not much water. She could only get a little bit of water in her green watering can. She gave a tiny bit of water to each flower. It was not enough, but it was all she had. She smiled at the tired flowers. She whispered to them, "It is okay. The rain will come." Then she went to her wooden table. She put out some seeds for the birds, but fewer birds came now. It was too hot. The ones that came looked weak and thirsty. She put a small dish of her well water on the table for them. They drank the water quickly. Alara watched them and she smiled. She walked to the village market. The streets were quiet. People moved slowly because of the heat. Their faces were sad and worried. Alara walked past them, and she smiled. She smiled at the worried baker. She smiled at the sad vegetable woman. She smiled at the tired children. But now her smile felt different to the villagers. Before, it was a nice thing or a strange thing. Now it felt wrong. The old man, Martin, saw her from his bench. He said to his friend, "Look at her. Our village is suffering. We have no water, our food is dying, and she smiles. She is making fun of us." His friend agreed. He said, "She does not care about our problems." The young woman, Sarah, saw Alara's smile. She felt a fire of anger in her heart. She walked up to Alara. She stood in front of her. She said, "Why do you smile, Alara? Can you not see we are in trouble? Do you not feel our sadness? Your smile is a lie." Alara stopped. She looked at Sarah. Her smile did not go away. She looked into Sarah's angry eyes. Her own eyes were kind. She did not say anything. She just stood there with her gentle smile. Sarah felt more angry because Alara did not speak. She turned and walked away. After that, people started to avoid Alara. When they saw her coming, they would cross the street. They would turn their heads away. They whispered about her. "She is a strange woman. She has no heart. Her smile is empty." The children were told not to talk to her, so they would see her and run away. Alara was alone. She walked through the village and no one looked at her. No one spoke to her, but she did not stop smiling. She smiled at the people's backs. She smiled at the closed doors. She smiled at the empty streets. Her heart was not empty. Her heart was full. It was full of something the villagers could not see. The days became weeks. The weeks became a month. Still no rain. The river was just a thin line of muddy water. The well in the village was almost empty. People could only take a small bucket of water each day. The village leader, a kind and wise old woman named Lena, called a meeting. Everyone in the village came. They gathered in the main square. Their faces were dark with fear. Lena stood on a small wooden stage. She said, "My friends, we have a great problem. There is no water. Our farms are dust. Our animals are thirsty. We do not have enough food for the winter. We must do something." A farmer stood up. He said, "What can we do, Lena? We cannot make the rain come. We can only pray." Another person said, "We will have to leave the village. We will have to find a new place to live." People started to talk. They were scared. They were angry. They did not know what to do. The meeting was full of sad and hopeless words. Then Alara arrived. She walked into the square. She was walking slowly, and she was carrying something. It was a large, heavy sack. She walked through the crowd of people. They moved away from her. They looked at her with angry eyes. They whispered, "What is she doing here?" Alara walked to the front near the stage. She put the heavy sack on the ground. She looked at Lena. She looked at all the villagers, and she was smiling. Her small, gentle smile was on her face. A man shouted, "Go away, Alara. We do not want your empty smile here." Another woman shouted, "Yes, go smile somewhere else. We are talking about real problems." But Alara did not go away. She just stood there, smiling. Lena, the leader, was a wise woman. She looked at Alara. She did not see an empty smile. She saw something else in Alara's eyes. She saw strength. She saw a light. Lena held up her hand for silence. The crowd became quiet. Lena said, "Alara, you have come to our meeting. You are a member of this village. Do you have something to say?" Everyone was surprised. They all looked at Alara. Alara had never spoken at a village meeting before. She was always quiet. Alara looked at Lena and she nodded. Then she bent down and opened the heavy sack. The villagers moved closer. They wanted to see what was inside. Inside the sack were hundreds and hundreds of small, gray stones. They were smooth and round like little eggs. The villagers were confused. A man said, "Stones? She brings stones to a meeting about water." People started to laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was a bitter, angry laugh. "She is crazy," someone said. "She thinks stones will help us." Alara did not look angry. She did not look sad. She reached into the sack and took out one small, gray stone. She held it up for everyone to see. And then she spoke. Her voice was as soft and gentle as her smile. It was not loud, but everyone in the quiet square could hear her. "This is a special stone," she said. "My grandmother gave me the first one. She told me a story." The villagers stopped laughing. They listened. It was strange to hear Alara's voice. "My grandmother lived in a village that had no water, just like ours. Everyone was sad. Everyone was hopeless. They decided to leave their homes, but my grandmother did not want to leave. She loved her home, so she went for a walk. She walked far away up into the high, dry mountains. She was very tired and very thirsty. She sat on the ground. She thought, this is the end. Then she saw something. A small plant was growing between two rocks. It was a bright green plant, but there was no water in the mountains. How could it grow? She looked closer. The plant was growing next to a stone, just like this one. Ilara held up the smooth, gray stone again. She touched the stone. In the hot, dry air, the stone was cool, and it was a little wet. She watched the stone all day. In the evening, when the air became a little cooler, tiny drops of water appeared on the stone. The air has water in it, even when it is dry. These stones collect that water from the air. The little plant was drinking the water from the stone. The villagers were silent. They looked at the stone in Ilara's hand. They looked at the big sack of stones. Old Man Martin whispered, "Is that possible?" Ilara continued her story. Her smile was still on her face. It was a smile of memory, a smile of knowledge. My grandmother was very smart. She gathered many of these stones. She took them back to her village. She put them in the dry fields next to her dying plants. She put one stone next to each plant. The next morning, the stones were wet. The ground around the stones was a little damp. It was not much water. It was only a few drops for each plant, but it was enough. The plants did not die, they lived. They were not big and strong, but they lived. The people in her village saw this. They stopped packing their bags. They went to the mountains. They all collected stones. They put stones all over their fields. They saved their plants. They saved their village. They did not get a lot of food that year, but they got enough. They survived. Ilara finished her story. She looked at the faces of the villagers. They were not angry anymore. They were thinking, the idea was so simple, it was so strange. Could it be true? Lena, the leader, stepped down from the stage. As she walked to Ilara, she looked at the stone in Ilara's hand. She gently took it. She felt it. It was cool. It was smooth. It felt different from a normal stone. Lena looked at Ilara. She asked, "Where did you get all these stones, Ilara?" Ilara smiled and said, "For many years I have walked. Every day I walk by the river, I walk in the hills. When I see one of these stones, I pick it up. I bring it home. I have a big collection. I was saving them. I did not know what for. Now I know." Sarah, the young woman who had been angry, stepped forward. Her face was full of shame. She said, "Ilara, we were unkind to you. We did not understand your smile. While we were worrying and complaining, you were planning. You were working. You had hope." Ilara looked at Sarah. Her smile was warm. She said softly, "My smile is not for when things are easy. My grandmother taught me that too." She said a smile is like these stones. It is a small thing. It does not fix the big problem. It does not make the rain come, but it can give a little bit of strength. It can give a little bit of hope. When you smile, you tell yourself, "I am not defeated. I am still here. I can still do something." My smile was for me, to help me keep collecting stones, to help me remember my grandmother's story. I did not smile because I was happy you were sad. I smiled because I knew we had a chance. I knew there was something we could do. A new feeling moved through the crowd. It was not hope yet. It was smaller than hope. It was the beginning of hope, a small seed. The farmer who had spoken before said, Where can we find more of these stones? Are there more in the mountains? Alara pointed to the high, dry mountains in the distance. Yes, she said. They are there. They are not easy to find. You must look carefully. Elena turned to the villagers. Her voice was strong. We have heard Alara's story. We have seen her stones. We have two choices. We can sit here and wait for our village to die, or we can try. We can go to the mountains. We can look for these stones. It is hard work. It might not work, but it is a chance. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then a young boy stepped forward. He said, I will go. I will look for stones. Then his father stepped forward. I will go too. Then Sarah said, I will go. And soon everyone was saying it. I will go. We will all go. A plan was made. The strongest men and women would go to the mountains to find stones. The older people and children would stay and put Alara's stones in the vegetable gardens and the fields. Everyone had a job. The feeling in the village changed. The sadness and fear were still there, but now there was something else too. There was purpose. There was a small light in the darkness. Alara gave her sack of stones to the farmers. They took them to the fields. They carefully placed one stone next to each small, dying plant. The children helped. They carried the small stones. They put them gently on the dry earth. They looked at the stones. They wondered if it was true. Could these simple stones save them? Alara went with the group to the mountains. She walked at the front with Lena. She showed them what to look for. They are usually near certain kinds of mountain plants, she explained. They are often gray, but sometimes they are a little blue or green. The walk was long and hard. The sun was hot. The ground was rocky, but the people did not complain. They were on a mission. They were working together. They reached the high, dry places in the mountains. They started to look. At first, it was difficult. All the rocks looked the same. But then a young man shouted, I found one, I found one. He held up a smooth, gray stone. It was cool to the touch. Everyone felt a surge of excitement. They looked more carefully. Soon, another person found one, and another. It was slow work. For every one special stone, there were 1,000 normal stones, but they did not give up. They searched for hours. They filled their bags and their baskets. They worked together, they helped each other, and something strange happened. People started to smile, not Alara's smile, their own smiles. A man would find a good stone and smile, a tired, happy smile. A woman would help her friend climb a rock, and they would smile at each other. They were small smiles, but they were real. They were smiles of hard work and shared purpose. They were the smiles of people who were fighting back. They came back to the village in the evening. They were tired. Their bodies were sore. But their bags were full of stones. The next day, they went back and got more, and the day after that, they put thousands of stones in their fields. And they waited. The next morning, everyone went to the fields to look. They knelt on the ground. They looked at the stones, and it was true. Each stone was covered in tiny drops of water. The dry earth around each stone was dark and a little damp. It was a miracle, a small, quiet miracle. The plants had a little water to drink. It was not a lot, but it was enough. The villagers felt a great wave of relief. They looked at each other. They looked at their fields, now full of gray, shining stones, and they looked at Alara. She was standing at the edge of the field. She was watching them. And she was smiling her small, gentle smile. This time, nobody thought her smile was strange. Nobody thought it was empty. They understood it now. Old man Martin walked up to her. He had worked hard in the mountains. His back was sore. He looked at Alara. He said, "Your grandmother was a wise woman." Alara smiled and said, "Yes, she was." Martin then did something he had not done in a long time. He smiled. It was a slow, creaky smile. But it was real. He said, "And you are a wise woman too, Alara. You saved us." Sarah came and stood next to him. She said, "You taught us something, Alara, not just about stones. You taught us about hope. We were all looking at the big, empty sky. You were looking at the small things on the ground." The days went on. The plants in the fields did not die. They began to grow again. They were small and not very strong. The harvest that year was not big. The vegetables were small. The grain was not plentiful. But it was enough. The villagers would not go hungry in the winter. They had survived. They had worked together. They had saved their own home. The long, dry summer finally ended. One evening, a cloud appeared in the sky, then another. The next morning, the sky was gray and full of clouds. And then the first drop of rain fell, then another and another. Soon it was raining. A gentle, steady rain. The people of the village came out of their houses. They did not run for cover. They stood in the rain. They lifted their faces to the sky. They let the cool water wash over them. The children danced in the puddles. Everyone was laughing. It was a happy, beautiful day. Alara stood in the rain too. The water ran down her face. And on her face was her smile. It was the same smile it had always been. Small, gentle, and constant. But now everyone saw it differently. They saw the strength in it. They saw the wisdom in it. They saw the love in it. The village was never the same after that dry summer. The people were closer. They knew how to work together. They knew how to face hardship. And they learned to appreciate the small things. The cool feel of a stone. A single drop of water. A gentle smile. Alara was not the strange woman anymore. She was their hero. She was their friend. She still lived in her little house with the blue door. She still watered her flowers and fed the birds. She still walked through the village every day. And she still smiled at everyone she met. But now they always smiled back. They knew that her smile was not about feeling happy. It was about choosing hope. It was a promise that even in the driest, hardest times, you can still find a way to grow. And so, in the small village by the quiet river, everyone learned that the strongest smiles are not for the sunny days, but for the stormy ones.